Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. There's an old adage from the Washington Post that says the daily paper is the first draft of history, and it makes sense that the white media would originate a phrase like that because it reminds me of another old saying from Napoleon, that history is a lie agreed upon. Now, you put those two ideas together and what do you get? The daily paper is the first draft of a lie agreed upon. And when we look at the aftermath of the 2024 election and the furious attempts to ignore the black elephant in the room, we see this principle in full effect. There's all kinds of people from across the white political and media sphere who have decided that they're going to make it their mission to rewrite what we saw just happen right in front of us. Now, the reason Kamala Harris lost this election is because the black vote stayed home. The Democrats need the black vote to turn out in full, in mass, full numbers if they're to win, especially in those crucial battleground states, because the battleground states almost all are red states, or at least light purple states, that just so happen to have large black cities in them. And that being the case, you got to get the black vote to turn out if you want to have a chance to win. Well, they're not about to admit that black voters are the ones who need to be catered to, and that if you go ahead and make sure that black voters are taken care of, you can win some elections. This is not about winning elections. This is about maintaining the white supremacist racial order in America. That's what this is actually about. So what they've decided is they're going to be pushing these phony counter-narratives. They're saying that, well, it was Latino voters, particularly Latino men, who apparently went for Trump in states where they don't even matter. States that may have Latino numbers, but these are states that are blood red to begin with. They only made them a little bit redder. But that's what the white media is pushing. Why? Because white supremacy is not based on anti-Latino racism. It's specifically based on anti-black racism. So it's completely and thoroughly safe to have people who in large part are immigrants from countries that practice heavy anti-black racism and then say, well, you know what? We should be looking at these guys. What is it that they need? That's what the Democrats have been doing. That's what their entire immigration strategy has been about. So as far as they're concerned, this is a perfect way to have their cake and eat it too. But the reality happens to be the Latino voters who may have broken for Trump, I'm talking about the Latino male voters in this case, they're in states that were already red to begin with. So all they did was they simply bolstered Republican numbers there. You don't win a national election by trying to turn a red state blue. It don't work that way. You win national elections by taking red states that have large blue enclaves and appealing to them. The Latinos are not that vote. Black voters, however, in Philadelphia are. They're the ones who can turn a red state blue at least for a night. Georgia's another example. Atlanta is the city that can turn Georgia blue at least for a single night. And that being the case, it doesn't matter what Andrew Yang says about Asian voters, and it doesn't matter what Alexandria Cortez says about Latino voters. They're not the ones who make the difference in that state. It's the black voters in Atlanta who do. But everybody's terrified of admitting to that, because everybody wants to be able to say that black people aren't really the ones who are important, even though we're the ones who make things happen. And even after we do, they turn around and say, well, we're going to take care of everybody else anyway. So that's what we're doing. We're educating people through pain. Now, that's the first thing that needs to be remembered. We're not going to be allowing these lies about, oh, it was other groups who turned the election. Latino voters did not matter in the states that they were in because they were already red. And as for Arab voters, we can go ahead and talk about the raging genocide that's taking place in Gaza, but the reality happens to be half of those folk from the uncommitted movement, they decided to break for Kamala anyway and start endorsing her. And as for the Arabs who didn't vote for her, they don't have sufficient numbers to matter, not even in Michigan. It's a matter of Detroit and Flint having stayed home, completely and thoroughly demoralized and disinterested in a politician who wasn't offering them anything. So no, we're not going to let anybody come along and try to rewrite the history books and say, well, you know, it may seem like black voters in Michigan made the difference. It may seem like black voters in Pennsylvania made the difference, but it was actually other groups. In fact, in many cases, they've been so brazen about it, they don't even mention black at all. They're terrified to do so because they know exactly where that conversation leads. And they've already had long experience at trying to head these conversations off at the pass, stop them before they even begin. So that's one pack of lies in the post-election period now that needs to be debunked and knocked down. Michelle Obama talked about, don't be afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation. Well, here's an uncomfortable conversation she doesn't want to have. Who lost the election? Well, the Ski-Wee contingent lost. The Boule Bootlicks lost. The Tethers lost. At least the ones on the left lost. Candace Owens and those Tethers on the right are probably wagging their tails right now. Among the biggest losers, however, is the old media, especially the old dead black media. The Charlemagne the Frauds and the Angela Ryes with lettuce and tomatoes on the side, and the DJ Penis Envies and the Joke Reeds and the other bootlicks are now proven as irrelevant as we've always said that they are. They don't have any influence. They got out there pushing all the lies, selling the soap. This is about abortion. This is about abortion. They said it nonstop. Jonathan putting on his cape heart was on the news, practically crying in tears. All these Negroes who the white media employs, whose purpose is supposed to be to lead you and me around by the nose. The white media puts them in front of a camera, or it puts them behind a microphone in a radio station somewhere. But as I've always told you, the white media can give you a platform, but what they can't give you is legitimacy. Only the black grassroots can give you that. And when it comes to these black bootlicks who the white media puts on, yeah, they'll get up there and they'll go ahead and sing the song loud as they can. But the thing is, you didn't care. You tuned them out. You didn't listen. So all of these Negroes who the white media's propped up, they've shown that it was just a waste of time and money. These are the safe Negroes who white media employs in order to deceive and hoodwink you and me. Otherwise, why is it that these guys were not the ones who were pointing out that Kamala Harris was falling behind and who she was falling behind with? They should be saying what we're saying, but they're not. It's because they're all part of the exact same white media apparatus. They want to be plugged into that same machine because that's what feeds them. What's happened during this election cycle has revealed what amounts to a paradigm shift in political discourse. The mainstream media still has their outlets. They've still got the advantage of what legacy media can give them. But what they don't have at this point is a monopoly anymore. Their monopoly has now been broken. It hasn't been destroyed, but it no longer has the complete and thorough absolute stranglehold that it used to. The people online, folks like the new black media, we are now starting to drive the events. They're terrified by it, they hate it, but what we're also showing is we can have an impact. Isn't that something? Podcasters have more influence. You want to know why? It's because when people like you listen to people like me, you understand that I'm coming from the same place you are. Call us whatever you want, citizen, journalist, whatever. But the reason that you put your faith in people like myself is because we don't live in some ivory tower somewhere like Magic Johnson and D.L. Hughley. These clowns who will tell you that you need to just grin and bear it while the Democrats give away everything to everybody except for you, and that you need to sacrifice for everybody else. We don't tell you that crap. You'll never see us on the cheese and croissant circuit, or at the cocktail parties in the Hollywood Hills somewhere, or doing $1,000 a plate brunches somewhere for fundraising. We don't do that kind of stuff. And the reason why is we come from the black street. That's the reason why. We come from the black grassroots. That's the reason why I've been out here for 15 plus years. It would be very easy for people like myself to sell out, but the truth of the matter is I still got to be able to look in the mirror in the morning and like what I see, and I can't look in the mirror and see a sellout. I can't live with that. Now, the D.L. Hugleys can do it, the Roly-Poly Martins can do it, the Joke Reeds can do it, and the rest of these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools, sellouts, suckers, and simps, they can go ahead and do that. But you and I can't. We should never do that. So that's the reason why you listen to people like me. You listen to people like me precisely because you know that I'm not sitting here trying to represent the interests of some political party or their big money, deep pocket donors in the background somewhere. I'm representing yours. I'm trying to speak up for you. That's why the message hasn't changed in 15 plus years, and it's not going to change. I'm here for the long haul, and so are the rest of the new voices of black media. We come from your ranks, and you recognize that. You also recognize that the Charlemagne, the frauds, and others, they sold out a long time ago. These are the people, they're just trying to get themselves a book deal. They're trying to climb the ladder of white media fame. They're trying to find a comfortable place under white supremacy so they can never get out here and actually speak the truth. Do you truly believe that if any of the new voices of black media had had an opportunity to interview Kamala Harris, that it would have been a bunch of softball questions about, tell me about your faith and tell me about you growing up and the rest of this crap? No. These idiots, they actually are out here trying to find ways to fool you into thinking that this is what an interview is supposed to be. No. If you cannot stand in front of the people that you want the support of and answer tough questions, then you don't deserve to represent them. You don't deserve to be their leader. You haven't earned it. Kamala tried to stick to shea butter Twitter. She tried to stick to bootlick media, and look where it got her. Yeah, you got a lot of idiots, some potheads, and some intersectionalists and other assorted losers who may listen to these clowns, but they're not the ones who are going to get off their couch to actually do anything. The people who would actually get up and vote happen to be the black grassroots, but we didn't have anything to vote for, so a lot of us voted for the couch this time around. Charlemagne the Fraud doesn't appeal to people who actually move. He appeals to the people who want to sit in front of the radio, yuck it up, listen to his stupid little asinine shuck and jive routine while they're smoking a joint. And these are the same people who then after that ain't going to produce nothing. So that being the case, having these little safe spaces for these bootlicks and shills, that may be what Kamala wanted, but it wasn't what she needed. But then again, what was she offering? Nothing. So she had to hide. And that's what it amounts to. If you're dealing with these little intersectionalists and the rest of these sellouts, you're not actually talking to the black community. You're attempting to try to bypass the black community. And if there's one thing you ought to know by now, the road to the White House runs straight through the black community. There is no way to bypass it. There's no road around that. And increasingly, as more and more black people listen to the new voices of black media, it's going to become obvious you're going to have to deal with us at some point. See, Kamala Harris, she made a huge mistake with that. She just ceded so much of the entire field to her opponent. Donald Trump certainly recognized the ability of these white media podcasters to have a positive impact on his election. That's what happened when he was catering to Alex Jones and more recently to Joe Rogan. He understood that principle. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, didn't. Donald Trump, love him or hate him, and I certainly don't like him, but he actually went and talked to the National Association of Black Journalists. I don't know why, but what it proved is this man would go in front of any audience and actually talk to them. Kamala Harris can't say that. She hides from audiences. And as a result, she tried to talk to people who she thought were already in the tank for her, and she wound up preaching to the choir, and what happened was the choir barely showed up. Trump did not win this election so much as Kamala Harris and the Democrats threw it away. What the Democrats have done is a perfect case study in how to totally demoralize your own constituency. Years and years of broken promises, on the few occasions they actually bothered to make any promises, and then prioritizing everyone but their base, and then the coup de grace, insulting their base, publicly scolding and excoriating their own base for daring to demand that they be listened to and obeyed. Trump never did those things. I guess that's why he's on his way back to the White House and Kamala Harris is on her way out. She spent election night at Howard University, reportedly, with the rest of the irrelevant black boule Greek frat sellouts. And then, after the networks began to report that she had lost the election, she didn't even have the decency or character to address those throngs of poor lost souls who called themselves Howard's student body. Instead, she slithered off like a snake and no doubt spent the night crying herself to sleep. And I have to say, have yourself a good cry, Kamala. You deserve it. All she was offering was marijuana and crypto. Is that the kind of thing that works in California? You offer to get people high and to keep them distracted chasing crypto coins, and that's supposed to make them vote for you? Must be a California thing. Talk about failure to read the room. Our issues are not marijuana and crypto. Our issues are reparations. And she gave a flat no to that one, so we remembered it. And the black media made sure you remembered it. But there's been other sellouts out here who've been mirroring the exact same contempt that Kamala Harris has. Whoopi Goldberg's a prime example of how archaic and pointless these mouthpieces are. She went on TV and she told millennials and Gen Zers that the reason they can't buy a house isn't because Kamala and company sold out to America's largest landlords like Blackstone. Whoopi said, no, the problem is you young people, you just don't want to work. Oh, you want to work 4 hours a week, you're not going to be able to afford a home on that, as if that's what's actually happening. I mean, the heifer actually had the nerve to say that. She dragged out that old conservative saw about, you young people just don't want to work. Why, back in my day, back in Whoopi Goldberg's day, the dollar hadn't been completely devalued, and houses cost only a fifth or less of what they cost today. That's what it was when she was coming up. The young and middle-aged, for that matter, today, they're not lazy at all. Nobody works harder than the poor. But this was what Whoopi Goldberg was saying. This millionaire Whoopi. When was the last time that she worried about housing prices? Way back in the late 70s, very early 80s? And how much did houses cost then? Probably far less than they do today, and there was a hell of a lot more inventory available. That's because the government hadn't sold out to big consortiums like Blackstone and BlackRock, or allowed corporations like Airbnb to help people put together schemes to artificially decrease the number of houses on the market. We didn't have NIMBYism and other sorts of social degradation in the minds of certain homeowners who want to make it where nobody can build anything because they figured they're protecting the price of their asset. I can't allow you to build any more houses because that would bring down the value of my home. So the less homes there are, the more valuable my house is. These are the forces that the millennials, the Gen Zers, and many of Gen X are having to contend with. Whoopi Goldberg didn't know that before she ran her mouth and didn't care. Now, this is a left-wing mouthpiece we're talking about here. These are the people who, allegedly to hear them tell it, they're on the side of the young, the disenfranchised, and yet, when it came down to it, she wound up talking about the under 50 crowd the same way the racist right-wing morons do. Well, hell, with an attitude like that, who needs Republicans? This collective attitude by the clueless left is why this all came as such a surprise that they lost. This is what happens when you practice cocooning yourself off with a whole bunch of other clueless people and you sit around in a circle telling yourselves how smart and how right you are. There's only a very small number of people who actually benefited from the Biden-Harris economy. As for the rest of the working class, they were completely left out. These are the people that they should have been listening to. Instead, as with everything else, they decided, no, we're going to surround ourselves with people who are going to say what we already want to hear. And they didn't have to hear anything they didn't want to hear, including a majority of their would-be voters telling them we're not going to vote for you. They didn't hear that part either. This is supposed to be the Democratic Party here, the ones who falsely claim to care about young people because they were going to eliminate student loan debt, right? By the way, how's that working out? Celebrities like Whoopi Goldberg are the reason Kamala lost. She likes to sit there and wall herself off in the homes of people like George Clooney and others. They sit around drinking fine wine, laughing to themselves about how clever they think they are and how they know better than everyone else. They're not out of touch because they were never in touch to begin with. Well, Whoopi has a TV show, but in the era of online media, she no longer has influence, not that she ever did. She certainly has no influence with the young, which is why she has no problem insulting them. Well, as she learned this week, those same young people didn't turn out to vote for Kamala. I guess they were just too lazy to, huh? Or perhaps they were too tired from all the work that they've had to do just to keep their own heads above water. What Whoopi Goldberg did was to say the quiet part out loud. She said publicly what it is that people like Kamala Harris and her ilk say privately behind closed doors. And as a result, we see that people like her don't know or care about how society has changed. They're not just clueless, but contemptible about the very people who are demanding changes that are needed. And this goes for your so-called alternative leftist media too. They're also trying to paint their own reality. They've got as much contempt for black people as anybody on the white right. I've seen a number of them, white of course, who have put aside any pretensions that they respected black voters. In the immediate aftermath of this election, a lot of them felt comfortable, or rather uncomfortable enough, probably in all sorts of disarray, that they just couldn't help but let the mask slip. Many of them have openly said that they were glad that Obama was lecturing black men and that they felt this helped to keep Kamala's numbers from going lower than they otherwise would have been.
For all the yelling at black men, they turned out exactly as they normally do for Democrats. So thanks, Obama and the Harris campaign for doing that. It was Latino voters and young voters, Bernie's coalition. That was a big part of the difference.
Now, did you hear what this heifer said? Barack Obama got out there excoriating black men, scolding black men, and she said, thank you for that. Thanking Barack Obama for insulting the black community and making sure to do it in front of the world. Thanking Barack Obama for finger-wagging at the black community, yet another litany of him insulting and condescending to us, and she said, thank you for that. She was grateful for that. She's thanking him for that, giving him a pat on the back. Yeah, Barack, thank you for that. That's exactly what needed to happen. The damned insult. This is your white leftist liberals here. Now, that's what she was saying about Barack Obama insulting and denigrating black men in this election. But here's my question. Do you truly believe that her attitude is different about what Barack Obama was doing back in 2007 when he came on the political scene and started his finger wagging at the black community and insulting black men and black women when he was president his first term and then his second term and then when he left office? Do you think that she felt differently about that? Or do you think she had the same attitude of, well, the black voters in general need to have someone wag their finger at them? So while we were outraged at the magic mulatto insulting us and calling himself excoriating and scolding us, the white liberals were only too glad to see it. No matter what they said before, because a lot of them weren't saying this stuff boldly before the election, but once the election was over, hell, they felt like they could go ahead and say what they really thought because it didn't matter at this point. And this is what they really think. The election is over now, and their Trojan cow lost. So now they feel emboldened to say what they really think. Don't offer black people anything, just insult them, scold them, call them names. That's all you got to do. That's a good thing. Barack Obama did good. That was very helpful. Don't dare be respectful towards black people and definitely don't listen to them. Just insult them and tell them then go vote for you. You got to slap black people around. That's what you got to do. This is your so-called alternative media leftists saying this. They're openly endorsing that abusing the black community is what they see as the right political posture to take towards us. Well, then I'd like to know, why doesn't this white woman endorse that same strategy with white women like herself? After all, 52% of white women voted for Trump this year, and the same way that they did in 2020 and 2016. White women keep going for Trump. This after a white woman, E. Jean Carroll, successfully sued him for rape, and yet 52% of white women voted for Trump regardless. Didn't matter how many of them grab him by the you-know-what videos got replayed over and over again. That didn't bother white women at all. White women just like her. Notice how your white liberals don't excoriate white women. Not the politicians, and definitely not your white talking heads. Why aren't people like this white woman saying that someone needs to send Hillary Clinton to wag her finger at white women, to scold white women, and tell them maybe they aren't feeling having an Asian woman as president? Yeah, that should work, huh? You're mad about the price of gasoline and groceries, and you think that that's more important than having an Asian woman as president? Don't make it where the country falls victim to your rage, as Michelle Obama said. Why don't they go ahead and lecture white women like that? They wouldn't dare. Because this is not about winning an election for them. It's about maintaining the racial pecking order in America, and they're not about to demand that they, as white people, be insulted, harassed, humiliated, or talked down to. They'll demand that they be listened to and obeyed. That's what they demand. If you were truly serious about trying to make sure that there was some sort of electoral change, why not tell the group of people who have the least reason to vote for Trump, tell them that they shouldn't be voting for him at all? Why not go up to white women and wag your finger at them and lecture them? They wouldn't dare do that. It's these white liberals, and you notice that it's the white female liberals who are usually the most strident and blatant about it. They never support either party going to white women and calling them out about anything. These white talking heads, even the ones you see online, they never do that. They don't make it a point that, oh, we got to talk about the problem with white women. White women voters are the problem. They never do that, not even once. Doesn't matter if all these white women are going for Trump or not. They never do that. And the ones who are on the right, they don't do it either. Because they understand that they don't want to have to actually cross that line or tiptoe across it. Well, are we going to start calling white people out on a regular basis? No. They know exactly what side their bread's buttered on. They don't want any bricks taken away from that particular wall. So you're not going to call them out about anything. And if anyone actually did come up to this white woman and say, well, you know what? White women did break for Trump. This is the third time in a row they've done it. Why won't white women stop supporting the rapist? Why doesn't somebody wag their finger at these white female voters? Why doesn't somebody scold them and tell them off? Why doesn't somebody get them told, let them know that they need to get back in line? If you did that, this white woman, the one on your screen, I bet you she would say what all of them say. Well, a message like that would be kind of a turnoff. You can't really expect that to resonate for white women. Well, any constituency wouldn't be too receptive to that. That's what she would say if anyone tried to specifically scold white women. They would never endorse it or praise it. This is what I was telling you in yesterday's briefing, that these white liberals would never change their anti-black attitudes simply because they lost an election. Here they are, having lost to a twice-impeached, multiple-time convicted criminal, a sexually rapacious insurrectionist, and they're saying that insulting black male voters was the right thing to do. This is the way that they're talking after an unprecedented, historically humiliating loss. Now, can you imagine how much more strident and obnoxious they would be if Kamala Harris had won? Because this is how they're talking in the face of a defeat when they're at their lowest. If Kamala Harris had won, you better believe they would all be saying, well, you know what? This is what works, and we're going to do this all the time. But this is what they're saying anyway after defeat. So what does that tell you? What that means is scolding black people, abusing black people, verbally harassing and trying to denigrate and humiliate black people. That's more important to them than winning an election. That's what they're saying. To them, that's the entire point. It's not a means to an end. Attacking black people, insulting black people, running us into the ground, that's an end unto itself. They would be doing that regardless, win or lose. And a woman like this, she'll be sitting here trying to tell you that she's different than the white corporate media. She's different than those talking heads on white cable. Does she sound any different? Is she expressing an opinion that's different where black people are concerned? Or is she sounding exactly just like the rest of them? I keep trying to tell you, family, you have no friends. So in the days coming out of this historic election, let's stay on our guard and on our square. Let's make sure we don't let anybody try to rewrite the history books about the reality of what actually happened here. The black vote stayed home and handed the Democrats this historic loss. When you disrespect the black vote, you will pay. If you dare to come up to us empty-handed, you're going to leave empty-handed. We're not going to put a ballot in your hand. We're going to give you air. That's exactly what we're going to give you. This is going to be the new normal. And all these people out here who've been thinking to themselves that they've been flying under the radar because they pretend to say a few conciliatory things about black people were not fooled. They know the real reason that this election went the way it did, just like we do. And it scares the hell out of them, but you know what? We're not going to stop pushing for what it is that we're owed. White supremacy has been around for far too long, and it's been people like this who have been keeping it propped up. And it's our mission, our duty, our glory to knock it down. And if they decide that they're going to be standing by white supremacy no matter what, well, what can I say? They'll be getting knocked down right alongside it. And you know what? The New Voices of Black Media wrote the final chapter of Kamala Harris's story, and we have no problem writing the final chapter of these other mouthpieces' story too. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Porter Walker, Eric Bailey, Kenneth Prescia, Seth Smith, and Henry Fair. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.